Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Matt Armstrong. I'm the president of the Crestview Neighborhood Association. And I just want to take a minute to say first thank you to everybody here. When we first thought about putting this together, we know that there's a lot of forums going on. There have been, and there'll probably be some more. But the neighborhood associations in District 7, when we learned of this change, put a lot of effort into making sure that we work together to put something together explicitly for District 7, given the fact that we have some geographical challenges in terms of how we're situated, but most importantly because we all share a lot of the similar issues. So we thought it'd be in our best interest to be able to deliver to all the candidates up here, whoever wins, the ability to understand that we as a community have put a lot of work in already, understanding where our place is in the city as it grows and how we can work together. And that's really what this forum, and certainly the upper forum that many of you attended a couple weeks ago, really represent. It's the neighborhood associations and all of the interactions that we have with those coming together and working together to make sure that our candidate and our eventual rep understands that we know how to work together, we can come to consensus, and we can be a real force for them as they advocate for us in the city council as a whole. So I would just like to say thank you to everybody here and have a big round of applause for all of us, please. Thank you. So tonight we brought in a pro. We have a professional moderator here to help us walk through the questions that we have put together to put in front of the candidates and as well as our Q&A. Her name is Rebecca Gonzalez. She is a graduate of Leadership Boston. Leadership Boston, for those of you that don't know, is an outreach group that's built to bring executives and other career professionals into the city to learn how to work for the city. So her and a bunch of other graduates continually work to be smarter and better at working with community groups. So Rebecca's a longtime Austinite. She's an executive with lots of experience. Most importantly, she knows the city. She's done a lot of community work and she knows its residents. So we found that she would be, thought she'd be a perfect person to help us walk through. So please, a big round of applause for Rebecca Gonzalez, please. And that's about it. We're gonna, as you see in the programs before you, we're gonna kick off with some moderated questions. These questions were called and put together by austindistrict7.org, which is our website put together by Steve Zettner and his crew. Thank you very much. But I just asked him kind of, innocently, can you please help? And he said, well, we put a lot of work into this. And
it's a neighborhood association. It was not on.
Oh, okay. Forgive me. Well, thank you. It was a lot of work, and I appreciate it. So those questions will be asked by our moderator to our panel here. They'll each have a chance to answer. We'll then take a break, and then we'll go into Q&A directly from the audience, and then we'll be done. So thank you very much, and enjoy.
Thank you, Matt. And we are going to start with the candidate's opening statement. Each candidate has 3 minutes. And we're going to go ahead and go from, like we will with the rest of these questions, go from left to right. So Mr. Salazar, you'll begin. And your time starts now.
Yeah, hello. My name is Pete Salazar, and I'm born and raised in Austin, Texas. A lot of you don't know, but I worked for Caritas of Austin and Goodwill of Central Texas. What that allowed me to do is really just work with people from all over Austin. And by doing that, it was more than just working for nonprofits. There was many times that city council either passed some legislation or failed to pass legislation where nonprofits had to meet that gap. So I had a first look and first sheet of experience of the human cost when we failed to do issues appropriately. I worked for the returning veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. I helped the formerly incarcerated and people that were homeless. And there was a large gaps of improper policies that affect Austinites. And I think that's what this 10-1 is all about, is affecting change. If the city council was going through the appropriate measures, doing their job, 10-1 would have never been needed. But we're here today, all of us are here today, because it's one call to speak and say that we want change, real change. There's a saying that says, there's the reality of freedom and the illusion of freedom. Well, I tell you, there's the reality of change and the illusion of change. So we have to be very careful of how we proceed. Because 10-1, they always ask us on the questionnaires, what is the biggest challenge that we're facing in the neighborhoods? And I can tell you right now, 10-1 is that challenge. Because if we don't do it appropriately, we're gonna get the same old people, the same old good old boys club and the same power brokers that have been affecting Austin for almost 100 years. And we need to change that. Because we need to do things because it's right, not because we can have profit at the end if we pass things or that we owe favors. You as Austinites deserve a government that represents you because you live here, not for what you can offer us. And I think that's why I'm here, and I'm the candidate to do that. So please go to Peters Austin, and I look forward to your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and have an opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is Ed English, and as every other candidate up here, I'm running for City Council District 7. I'm a 31-year resident of the district. I'm a Vietnam-era veteran. I've run a successful small business. I was a leader with Austinites for Geographic Representation that got the 10-1 system on the ballot and passed. As a result of that, I've been up and down the district from one to the other, east, west, north, south, for the last 2.5 years, collecting the thoughts, the concerns, and the suggestions of the residents of this district. I also have 30 years of private industry experience in sales and marketing. With that, quite a depth of experience in contracts and negotiation. I bring to the table a skill set that would allow me to ask the kind of questions that hopefully would avoid another water treatment plant number 4, another biomass fuel plant. There's been some very costly decisions made by the City Council because they haven't asked the right questions. Also, I bring a private industry mindset to the council. If I'm fortunate enough to be elected, it's vastly different than a government mindset. A private industry mindset thinks about things like customer service. Providing customer service is paramount in the private industry because if you don't, your customers take their business somewhere else. The other thing that comes with being in private industry is price consciousness. In private industry, you don't stick your hand in your customer's wallet and continually ask them for more and more and more. It'd be a goal of mine on City Council to restore a sense of fiscal responsibility to our city government and make sure that the costly decisions that are made by the City Council weigh the consequences, the cost, and the burdens that are imposed upon the citizens who have to live with those decisions. As a result of having spent the last 2.5 years collecting opinions and thoughts and suggestions across the district, my positions are pretty well established. I haven't waffled, I haven't flipped on my position. I oppose the rail proposal. I support the purchase of the state tract at 45th and Bull Creek for a park. I oppose the pending Code Next changes, which would further deteriorate the character of the neighborhoods in this district. I support putting expensive projects like the Onion Creek buyout on the ballot so voters have a chance to decide whether or not that's something the taxpayers should be footing the bill for. For me, this is not a stepping stone to a position at some higher level. I don't need to collect political favors that I need to pay back later. My objective is very simple, which is to be the very best city council representative for this district and this city that I can possibly be. I ask for your support and thank you very much for being here this evening.
Thank you. Ms. Poole.
Thanks. Good evening, everybody. My name's Leslie Poole. I'm a longtime Austinite. I've lived in Austin since 1980. That's 34 years. I currently live in Rosedale. I have a long history of service in this community. I've served on 4 commissions at the city, 3 bond task forces, numerous stakeholder groups, groups at the city and in the neighborhoods, including Imagine Austin and Code Next meetings and different coalitions. I'm a graduate of Leadership Austin too. I was in the class of 1999-2000, and I guess we all say we're the best class ever.
That's right.
That's right. I'm a past president of the Austin Women's Political Caucus and a co-founder of North by Northwest Democrats. I've worked on my master's degree at the LBJ School of Public Affairs. And I'm also currently on the board of Livable City, which is a local nonprofit that focuses on sustainability issues in the city of Austin. I'm also currently chair of the Design Principles Work Group for the Bull Creek Road Coalition, and you may have been reading some in the newspaper recently about the activity on the 80 acres that are located along Bull Creek Road, on the shores of Shoal Creek, and between 45th and 35th Street. The coalition, working together, built consensus around a plan working with 7 neighborhood associations, and one of them is Allendale. Another is Riker Woods, Rosedale, Highland Park, Balcones West, Ridgely, Oakmont Heights, Westminster Manor, and also the people who back up to the property and whose front yards are right on 45th Street, which is really difficult to get in and out of their driveways. Our primary accomplishments with the Bull Creek Road Coalition is our design principles document was adopted by TxDOT and is provided to any interested proposers who want to develop on that land. It's part of the bid packet, which was a signal success for a group of neighborhood associations. We also passed legislation during the last session that gives neighborhoods a seat at the table and a voice when the state moves to develop the land it owns. And I want to just make a point here that this applies statewide, not just in the city of Austin or Travis County. Earlier this month, on a 6-1 vote, council agreed to conduct a due diligence analysis of the proposal for the city to buy the land from TxDOT. And if we do move to purchase that land, it would be at assessed rate, which is a pretty good deal. And ultimately, what we hope to see on that 80-acre tract is a compatible plan that includes affordable housing, mixed-use retail, and living space, and a park on the 30 acres that abut Shoal Creek. And we've partnered with the Shoal Creek Conservancy to extend our efforts to addressing the serious bank erosion and also to conserve the creek, and one day maybe Shoal Creek will flow again. So I give you this as an example of my current work and to demonstrate what I can do for you on the council
Thank you,
for
Ms.
District
Bull.
7. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jimmy Paver. I am a lifelong resident of this area. About 30 years ago, I played the Christmas tree in Wozniak Hall here. I went to pre-K through 2nd grade here at St. Louis and have grown up going to Northwest Park and North Cross Mall before they tore it all down. And aside from giving you my resume, I just want to tell you a story that I think really illustrates how people feel about what's going on in Austin right now. I was listening to KUT the other day, and there was a testimonial from a guy who lived in Austin, I don't know, for 20 years. And he was sitting on a park bench one day eating his lunch, and a one-legged grackle walked up to him, obviously soliciting a chip or a piece of meat from his sandwich. So the guy eventually gives the grackle a chip, and the grackle immediately drops its second leg. So I think in a lot of ways, that's how we feel in this area of town. We feel duped by the city in ways big and small. We have supported bond packages and not benefited from them. We continuously see the city dip into our pocket for things that we don't see corollary benefits for. So I'm very interested in how we as a district can protect ourselves, knowing that I have strong roots in this community. I worked for 10 years at the federal and state level, many of those years for Congressman Doggett, and one of the things that he prided himself on and that I oversaw was constituent services for a district of 652,000 people, which is far bigger than the 80,000 that I hope to represent. It is within the fabric of what an elected official should do, whether they can give you an answer that is an up or down on a policy proposal or a pothole. It doesn't matter. Everyone is entitled to representation and to be listened to. So thank you. My name is Jimmy Paver. I welcome your questions and look forward to this event. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm Melissa Zone, and I want to thank you for being out here on a Friday night, because you really care about your community, you can tell, giving up this Friday evening. And I too care about our community. And that's why I am running, because of our community. We need to get a handle on growth. We need to protect our natural resource. Growth needs to pay for growth. The last decades, we have allowed transportation projects, park projects, and we've allowed wastewater projects to go and benefit developers. And it's all been on our tax dollars. And that needs to change. I have experience to tackle Austin's growth problems, contributing to our cost of living, our affordability, transportation, permitting, and taxes going up. You need someone who has that experience. For the last 20 years, I've been an urban regional planner, and I've been successful at implementing public policy at local levels. And these are the urban issues that we have been impacted on. And it's time our neighborhoods have a voice. It's time that you have a candidate who's been in the neighborhoods helping people, as opposed to benefiting those downtown or political interest. As a professional urban planner with Transportation Natural Resources Department of Travis County, I work doing transportation issues, water planning, protecting our environment. What I've seen is, not just at the county level, but I see it at local level more so, is that we provide really good sound policy, and it gets pushed aside for developers' interests. We have people who sit on bonds and commissions with agendas to help others, the neighborhoods. It's time you have someone who has no special interest. You know, my special interest has been helping neighborhoods here in District 7. Up north, small businesses getting through the watershed, complex regulations. Been helping neighborhoods in Northwest to divert traffic from a multifamily development. This is what I'm here for, is to help you. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jeb Boyd. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Again, you all have lots of choices on your Friday night, and I appreciate your commitment and choice to interest in Austin, interest in District 7. I'm running to represent you on the Austin City Council. This election is a big change for the city, and it's really important that we get folks into the council who are going to represent us in District 7 and who work for not just work for District 7 and for Austin as a whole, because it's important that we get this system to work right. I think I've got the best background, for doing that. I've served on the Parks Board, Downtown Commission, Waller Creek Commission, 2012 Bond Commission. You can go and see the results of the projects I've worked on. You can see the Slaughter Creek Trail, you can see the Town Lake Boardwalk, you can see the Pfluger Bridge, and many other projects around town where I have worked and over the years improving these things. As an attorney, I've spent most of my career working with community groups, local governments, state agencies, and federal agencies, getting everyone together on the same page to work on projects to improve our quality of life. I'm looking forward to doing this for Austin. I'm looking forward to bringing this experience to bear in benefit of Austin as a whole, and especially for District 7. District 7, in many ways, has felt left out. And we need to make sure that we have the accountability, that we have the results and the projects done. I will be there to listen and respond to your needs and concerns. Accountability is one of the key promises of the 10-1 system. And as your council member, I will be open and available and listening to you. I will let you know when the city is doing things in your neighborhood. If there's a project, if there's a matter of concern, I will be there. I will respond to those concerns. Look forward to representing you and to your questions tonight. Thank you very much.
My name is Darrell Whittle, obviously candidate for District 7. Really interested in being here tonight. I actually, when I first came to Austin in 1979, I started out in North Austin. I lived over on Fairfield and worked on Anderson Lane, a couple of the restaurants while I was going to school. If you remember them, Shadows, which was the precursor, I think, to Chez Fred. Tortugas down on the corner of Shoal Creek. One of those people that kind of, as I went to school, I gravitated downtown and then ended up working downtown for years and years. And now I've kind of come home again. I'm living at the Domain right now. I manage a restaurant there. I've worked the last 20 years as a business manager, and one of the things that I want to do is bring a little more of a business perspective to the council. As opposed to a lot of people, I actually think the council's done a good job When I worked downtown, I was within walking distance of the council and actually spent a lot of time there. I served as I'm a current board member of the Greater Austin Restaurant Association and a past president. In that capacity, I actually worked for 5 years on a project with the city, which was the restaurant recycling project. Obviously, it took a lot longer than we wanted it to take, but we finally came together, both stakeholders in the city, the haulers, and found a solution. But what I saw while I was down there is that the city council really does work hard. They've got an unbelievable amount on their plate. I do think sometimes that they bite off a little too much. They're supposed to be a deliberative body and a policymaker, and I think they try to do too much. Also sat on the board of the Hotel Association, the Austin Hotel and Lodging Association, as an advisory member. I sat on the state board of the Texas Restaurant Association for 3 years, and I led their state committee for sustainability and social responsibility, which is what led me into the recycling project with the city. Real interested in representing District 7. Thank you very much. Interested in representing District 7. There's a couple of things that I really want to do. As I said, I want to bring a business perspective to the council. 2, I want to try to set up some kind of constituency service. On the last budget, when they had started talking about this 10-1, there was no money allocated for it. They passed a new budget last week. To be honest with you, I'm not sure if they've allocated money. What we'd like to do is set up some kind of a satellite office. Right now, the plan had been to meet in libraries and things like that, which I think is not a good idea. The other thing I want to do is try to get people back on track. I want to restore the faith that people have in Austin. This election season, we've heard a lot of shrill talk. Obviously affordability is a huge issue, transportation, water, and that sort of thing. But it seems like people are afraid, and I don't want people to be afraid or even apprehensive. We've got a great city. I think that we've been on the right track. We just need to address some of the pressing issues, and I think that, she's telling me my time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here tonight. My name is Zach Ingram. I'm running for City Council in District 7. What led me to run is that I am not a politician. I am a citizen. In 2013, I saw a problem of dogs getting shot by police officers and felt that I had answers and felt that I had the ability to solve that problem. So I contacted folks with the Austin Animal Center, the Austin Police Department, spoke at the City Council, the Texas Humane Legislative Network, ultimately toured the Austin Police Department's facilities, attended what was at the time their current training session, and how they handled aggressive dogs, and then ultimately made recommendations to them. And working together with Art Acevedo and members of the Continuing Education Department, we were able to implement training for all Austin police officers that they all attended and finished by September of this year. So that was what opened my eyes to what a common citizen could do when they saw a problem and were willing to work with those involved to find a compromise and get to a solution. And ultimately, we accomplished this at no additional cost to the taxpayer, and it was something that was very successful and I'm very proud of. So with that in mind, with the 10-1 opportunity, I thought that I would bring fresh ideas and a lot of new ideas to the City Council, and frankly what had been lacking over the years. A lot of these issues are common sense issues and ones that we can find solutions on if we're willing to work together, and they've just been ignored for too long. So I'm very excited at the opportunity of being elected to represent District 7. I think that I'm one of the people and have a great business background to where I'll be able to find common sense solutions to these problems that are facing the district, whether they be affordability, transportation, police accountability, or related to the environment. So again, my name is Zach Ingram. I'm running in District 7. I'm very excited to be here to speak to you tonight.
Thank you all very much. As we move forward with the moderated questions, I would ask that the audience please keep the applause to a minimum in the interest of time. We have everyone that has a minute or 2 minutes to answer these questions, and we want to get to your questions as well. So if you would bear with us and let the candidates answer and then continue on through the process, we can make this move pretty quickly. Thank you so much for your participation. Okay, so we're going to start on the left with Mr. Salazar. First question, you have 2 minutes. Our timekeeper, Laura, will help you stay on track, but 2 minutes for this first question. And the question is, what steps would you take to improve affordability, especially for longtime residents?
Well, I think there's two parts. We need to address the loss of our small businesses. And that does two things. You know, Austin has a soul, and I believe that goes into the local communities and small business areas. So I want to establish small business corridors. So that makes sure, instead of incentivizing big box stores coming in other developments, we keep the community stores, we keep the businesses that make Austin Austin. Secondly, I think we made the appropriate move of allowing people to add on to their houses and components, because like my family, you know, that's something, a usage that if they need to rent out a house to upkeep their monies so they can go longer and further in their retirement, then we can do that. So we need to make sure that we're not making decisions to be on Ford's number one list. We need to make sure that we take care of communities in a way that you're able to afford to live here through even our public utility, making solar power available to everybody where the utility company can rent to lease those things. That's going to lower your electric bill. And so you have a baseline of your charges, so you don't have to worry about from month to month somehow, because we're using the public utility as a, you know, buying body to get resources that is going to expand. We got to support our local businesses, and we got to keep our charges at a current level. Thank you.
Mr. English?
Affordability is the question. It's right there with traffic. And there's a whole host of things that we can certainly look at to make Austin a little more affordable. The one that you're hearing an awful lot about is a homestead exemption. I fully support that. It's well within our capability of offering that. We can also look at serious utility rate reduction. Last year, Austin Energy transferred $105 million to the city's general fund. We need to start ratcheting down and using letting Austin Energy keep some of that money so that they can buffer the cost of fuel and reduce our rates. We don't need to be constantly looking at rate increases. Also, we need to, in the long term, we've got to add some housing stock. If we add housing stock, it significantly reduces the upward pricing pressure for both renters and homeowners alike. We also need to fix a very broken permitting system in this town. Builders will tell you, with all the evidence to back it up in the world, that one of the biggest obstacles they face to building affordable housing is a seriously flawed permitting process that takes too long, costs too much. Even if you do a simple home remodel, you're going to encounter a nightmare. That process needs to be streamlined. We also need to tighten up the city budget. There's an incredible amount of fat that can be cut, because the city budget basically drives your property taxes more than any other single factor. And we can even do simple things that are well within our reach for long-term residents and for senior citizens, which is to offer discounts on city services, on city events. It's small, but those are the kind of things the city can do to save our long-term residents and our senior citizens $1 here, $1 there, and it all adds up. Thank you.
I do a number of things. I'll give you 5. First would be reduce the utility rates. I would revisit the recent decision by Austin Energy to combine the commercial rates with the light industrial rates, and then blend them in with the residential rates. That's caused our electric rates to go up because we're bearing a share of the higher electric rates that normally are only assigned to commercial and light industrial. I'd engage with the fight to reform our property tax system. The appraisals and taxation, we need to restore an equal and fair elements that the state constitution requires. This will be a fight that will be engaged, I hope, statewide, and it will be at the Capitol, and there are some things that we can do about it to organize here locally so that we can have success at the Capitol. I'd work to keep our bonded indebtedness down. This needs to be balanced between projects we need done in the district and in the city with keeping our tax burden as light as possible. I'd improve the routes and increase accessibility and availability on Cap Metro buses so more people can take advantage of these different transit options. I'd like to see folks get out of cars onto bikes or buses, and this will also reduce our traffic congestion and it'll help keep our air clean. And the last one, the fifth one, oppose the tax subsidies that we've been eager to give to big corporations to attract them to come into town. There's no reason to pay people to come move here. We already know that they're happy to come. So I want to slow down the fire hose of uncontrolled growth and have a more managed approach to development in town. Thank you.
On affordability, there's multiple ways of saying the same thing. There are, basically, I'd like to break this into two categories of direct policy that we can enact, and then there's more of an indirect policy. Directly, what we can do, as Leslie said, we can hold down our bond indebtedness. Bonds, for how much they serve you, ultimately become a pass-through on your property tax. You're paying for them year over year, so you want to be really careful about what you choose to support. Electricity rates and overall fiscal constraint at the city is something that has not even been a topic of discussion. We are spending 1-to-1 each year without any thought of putting any of that money back into reserves. The city budget has ballooned 80% in the last 10 years, and do we have the corresponding services to show for it? I don't think that we do. On affordability, when it comes to housing stock, we continue to suburbanize poverty in a way that is going to hurt us in the long term. Sprawl is not a solution, and real density means you do increase the housing stock, but you also co-locate all of the necessary services that people need to find it convenient enough to get out of their cars. Too often, and I will take the Crestview Station as an example, we establish infrastructure, but without the corresponding things that we need for people to use it. There is no parking there, there is no neighborhood access, there is no grocery store, there is no dry cleaner. We need to address these things in a comprehensive way in order to get people out of their cars as opposed to just paying lip service to what we think we need to do. Thank you.
When I got in this race in early May, one of the first things I talked about was getting a grasp on affordable cost of living for everyone. Because right now we're heading into a monoculture where you have to make over $300,000 really just to afford to live here. Our housing and our car transportation is over 40% of the budget for a household. That's outrageous. And when you look at affordability and something to do with, we want to see something immediate. As a home rule city, we could adopt an ordinance that would allow a disclosure law to be set in, so when new commercial development comes in, they have to disclose what they paid for their property. What that does is offsets what we have been doing, which is paying over 55, residential taxes are over 55% of the budget for paying into the general fund. If commercial development paid their fair share, we wouldn't have to be burdened with that cost. Second, we need a transportation impact fee ordinance, which would require growth to pay for growth. When these developers come in, they pay for that infrastructure. Again, since early May, I've been saying that our bond dependency is outrageous. We put people in those, sitting on those committees who do the bidding for developers. That needs to stop. Thank you.
Well, absolutely. Affordability is the biggest challenge we're facing in the city right now. I'm in favor of a $5,000 universal homestead exemption. We can implement that right away and take that off your tax bill for next year. We need to require, and I think the city has the authority to require sales price disclosure for commercial properties. Right now, the appraisal district has to guess at what commercial properties are valued at, and they need to have solid data so that we can help restore equity and fairness. We've got a lot of work we need to do at the Capitol. We need to have that as part of a key top of our legislative agenda, reforming the appraisal process statewide and doing that. But bottom line, we've got to build housing. A recent market study showed we're 47,000 units behind on the demand for housing here in Austin. Our apartment occupancy rate is at 97%. What this has meant is we've seen that we've got people coming into the neighborhoods and bidding up the values of the houses in the neighborhoods. And landlords are putting fresh coats of paints and fancy signs on old apartments and raising the rents. We've got to stop that. And we only stop that by bringing new supply into the pipeline. The Code Next process is a great opportunity for taking that on. So we'll look and for everything we can for doing that. The permitting process definitely needs to be reformed, simplified. We can do a lot more of the work online. We don't need to require builders to stop and leave the job and go downtown to One Texas Center to pull permits.
It's basically the affordability issue comes down to, in my opinion, three things: housing, transportation, and utilities. With housing, I think we're going to see some relief in the legislature this year. Senator Watson's working on that right now. I do support a homestead exemption, and I think the $5,000 exemption, nobody's going to vote against that, but it's not going to make much of a difference. What they're working on in the legislature is a change in the law so that we can have a percentage exemption, and then we're going to try to put a cap on it so that it's not regressive. I think Judge Dietz's recent ruling on Robin Hood, although they've been kicking this thing around for years and years, I think that this is finally going to resonate. I'm hoping that we're going to get some relief on the school funding. We've been sending so much money out of Austin to other school districts, and I think it's about time that they change that. With regard to housing, thank you. With regard to housing, obviously we're way behind in units. I think we can clean up the permitting process and try to ease that a little bit, make it a little easier to bring some new housing online. Unfortunately, what we're seeing is that the bigger we get, the more people come. So there are some other issues that have to be addressed. Transportation, obviously, I think if we get some people out of their cars, that's going to help. I'm not a big proponent of the rail plan as it's being proposed on Proposition 1. I love rail. I grew up in the Northeast. I came here in '79, but I grew up in the Northeast. I use rail all the time up there. I just don't think it's going to work because of the numbers, because of the density here. The last thing is on the utility. I honestly believe that we have to get away from this dependence on the utility as our cash cow. And that means that we either have to find another cash cow or we have to cut something out of the budget. And I think we have to cut something out of the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. Affordability is obviously one of the biggest issues when I'm knocking on doors and talking to voters. The price of housing is going up, the price for renters is going up, and so we have to do something to protect that. I do support a 20% homestead exemption. I would support a $5,000 exemption, anything to bring down the costs on homeowners as quick as possible because that's tangible. But I also see it as a supply and demand issue. So we've got to work with Code Next, which is something I want to get intimately involved with once elected, so that I can help rewrite the city code, streamline the permitting process so we can get more homes built as quickly as possible. Austin's permitting process takes about 2 years, where it takes about 6 months in San Antonio. So that's something that we could get on right away and have tangible results. More homes built will drop the price of homes for renters and the sale price of homes. I also want to look at Austin Energy like a business. Those profits are essentially a second tax that we are paying to the city of Austin, and we're paying a higher energy price because of it. So I want to look at those funds to try to find savings within them so we can return those savings to the citizens of Austin. If we can get the price per kilowatt down closer to 8 cents per kilowatt rather than 11 cents, particularly in summer months, that's tangible savings. That's hundreds of dollars cut off people's electric bills, particularly folks that are living in homes and paying high electric bills. I also want to be part of the oversight committee for Austin Energy. Currently, they have no true oversight committee. This is a billion-dollar company that's never been audited. Finding 10% savings within Austin Energy would be hundreds of millions of dollars that we could return to the citizens of Austin. That's not a program. That's something tangible that would be back in your pocket as soon as we did it. Thank you.
Thank you all for your answers, and thank you all for staying on topic. We appreciate that. So this next question is a 1-minute question. So you will each have 1 minute to answer this question. I'm going to mix it up a little. I'm going to start with Ms. Poole this time. The question is, what is your vision for Burnett and Anderson?
So my vision for Burnett and Anderson is an active corridor with a lot of interesting shops, with easy entrance and exit, with that doesn't extend into the adjacent neighborhoods with either its sound or the traffic or the parking. So I see Burnett and Anderson as very active, lively areas, corridors. Any new development would be compatible with established neighborhoods and would have step down to the neighbors behind them and soft edges so that it's compatible with the existing residential stock that may be behind it. I also see a free traffic flow, and here I think I may be blue skying it, but a free traffic flow that would include proper signalization. Did I run out of time?
Thank you, yes.
Okay, we'll stop with the traffic light.
Mr. Paver.
Okay. There have been activity corridor proposals for Burnett and Lamar, and they are murky at best. I think that along Burnett, Lamar, Anderson, that there should be density where it is appropriate. There is too much scattershot vertical mixed use along Burnett Road, along Anderson, coming on Anderson, and Lamar. And so I think that one of the things that we need to focus on as a city, and this is another indirect policy tool, is directing growth away from neighborhoods. I agree that compatibility is a huge part of that. Neighborhoods are intact for a reason. We do not need to infringe upon them. We need to find transportation options for people by grouping them together. And one of the things that I think we can do better as a transit authority is focus on the key variable of ridership. As long as we can, if we can be sophisticated enough to move people into a particular area, we should be sophisticated enough to provide them routes that actually move them around the city. There are too many empty buses and rail cars that move every single day. And that's my time. Thanks.
My vision for Burnett and Anderson Road is really what the residents want for Burnett and Anderson. It's not about me. This is about you, and you need a representative who can do that. 20 years of urban planning, written corridor plans and neighborhood plans. I've implemented them by using what in my field we call participatory planning. And what that does, it takes the vision of businesses and the homeowners and renters, and you make sure that their vision is what ends up being in place in that plan. So my vision is what you want, and what we're going to do is make sure that it's at a human scale, because right now we're starting to get development that is up onto the roads and it's very high, and you're going to start to get a tunnel. We don't want that. We need air circulation. You want to have wonderful streets where they're walkable, you can bike, and families can enjoy as well as young people. Thank you.
Well, you know, the Imagine Austin plan calls for a compact and connected Austin. Right now, Burnett and Anderson is neither. And, you know, looking at this, I think we need to probably look at the connected part before we do the compact, because, you know, the connections are the big problems. We've got long blocks along Anderson with no connections. For example, so if someone lives over on the west side of Lucy Reed School and wants to go to get some Indian food at Tarka, that's only about 200 to 300 yard walk. But to get there, they have to go all the way over to Shoal Creek or all the way back over to Burnett Road. And this is how we get traffic and how this all generates. So we gotta work on restoring the connections in this, and I think we just need to have a real conversation about this. We've missed some real opportunities with the North Cross redevelopment and with the Ross project to try to address and improve the connections and improve the Burnett-Anderson area, and we've just got to all get together and work on it and come up with a plan that we agree on, that we move forward, that can improve it, that can really address traffic primarily.
Thank you.
The 35 years that I've been here, Anderson and Burnett have both shown commercial development. Some of it's been an improvement, some of it hasn't. The reality of it is, in capitalism, it's going to grow up somewhat organically. Obviously, through the zoning process, we can control some of it. One of the things, for instance, that the city of Miami did was make sure that when you're changing your zoning, you only jump one zone at a time. In other words, if you have a low rise, you're not going to go immediately to a high rise. You're going to go to a mid rise. This development's going to happen, and there's some things that we can do about it. We can get involved, and that's what I'd recommend everybody do. One of the reasons I want to bring constituency services to the district is because people really don't want to go down to City Hall. Most of you probably don't want to go downtown at all, unless you're going to a show or unless you're going to dinner or something like that. But you certainly don't want to go down and sit around in City Hall and work on a committee. I think it would make sense for us to get involved, to get the neighborhoods involved. I keep running out of time.
Thank you very much. As far as Vernon and Anderson, I would want to work directly with the surrounding neighborhood associations to make sure that their existing neighborhood plans are implemented in the changes that are made to Vernon and Anderson. If we're protecting the neighborhoods and paying attention to their concerns, then we're not going to make the wrong decisions once we let the development begin. Aside from that, I would, trust the market. I think that local businesses here in Austin are going to want to open shops and stores and businesses that benefit us, that we enjoy, that improve the surrounding area. So as long as we look at zoning closely and carefully to make sure that it does not infringe on the existing neighborhoods in this wonderful area that we want to protect, then we're going to do the job right. And so I think that's a good plan and a good logical way to move forward and make the most out of Vernon and Anderson.
Mr. Salazar?
Yes, I also want connectivity, and I'm kind of selfish in that because I use public transportation. I walk to Vernon every time. I walked to Vernon for 30 years because that's where my barber was at. Well, not when I was a kid, but in those capacities. And I want a sidewalk that doesn't have a big giant crack that can make people fall and get hurt when they, if they can't see, if they're blind. There's been times where I've seen people from the school from the blind. They're waiting, and I offer to assist because there's a giant crack there, and if you don't see it, you could hurt yourself. That's the capacity. I want neighborhoods there. I want people there. I want us to enjoy like we did before. I want us to be able to walk and eat and just exist in our neighborhoods. I mean, I know it seems like a lofty goal, but I think if we get together, we can do it. Thank you so much.
Mr. English?
It's a critical intersection, no doubt about that. And just on a very straightforward basis, I've seen some extraordinarily innovative designs that could be implemented at Vernon and Anderson to dramatically increase the traffic flow. But one of the things it's a reality is that Burnett Road, as far as public transportation is concerned, going forward is going to be largely dependent upon the bus routes, the bus system. It's a commercial intersection, and there's ample opportunities there to turn that into a transportation hub. I'd also like to see, to keep people off the road, to make services convenient, I'd also like to see that a city services hub be incorporated into that intersection so that if you need a permit, if you need something that you normally have to go downtown for, you don't have to go. You've got those services available to you very close by. And I'm probably getting short on time, so I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your answers. The next question is about land use and transportation, and each of you have 1 minute to answer this question. This time I'm going to start with Ms. Zone. First question, the question is, what land use and transportation options are appropriate as part of the upcoming planning process? You have 1 minute.
So I'm assuming you're meaning Burnett and Anderson, correct, on this question?
I think this is more of a general, broader question about just general land use and transportation in the area.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure because it would be answered differently. And I guess maybe having that urban planning experience, I like to be a little more specific. But the land use and transportation options that are appropriate, and I can't stress this enough, this has to go through the participatory planning process. You need to be a stakeholder. What I do in my career, and what I've been doing for the last 20 years, is I'm the facilitator. I make sure that the policies that are adopted reflect what the residents want. I could tell you from block walking since early June, throughout District 7, we have one common goal. We're feeling pushed out. We're feeling that these new development does not fit our needs, and no one's listening. And that need has to get implemented with someone who knows what type of policy gets adopted. Our roads need to be safe, but we need to have sidewalks if they want us to be walkable before you add density. We need infrastructure to support this. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, when starting, a planning process, it's really, you start with all the options on the table, but then you need to, figure out which ones are appropriate, for the area. And then eliminate the ones that are not consistent with the existing character or what the people want in there. So again, and this involves, going out to the public, meeting with people, listening, and getting feedback, and hearing, the vision of the people for what they want in the neighborhoods, what we're looking for in the neighborhoods. I think the key challenges that we're looking at, on this is that we do have the transportation corridors, where there's a desire for more development, and where we need to have more development if we're going to make the corridors work well, and hopefully to get the walkable and options with the local services in there. But we also need to protect our core family neighborhoods. The single family neighborhoods are such an essential part of Austin's character, and we can do that. But then how we work the transition between the two is going to be the key question.
Thank you.
It's interesting, we talk about all these big macro issues in the campaign. As I talk to people in the neighborhoods, they want the city to fund the parks, maintain them. They want to keep pools open, maintain them. They want public spaces where people can come together, mix with diverse groups. They want their schools to be maintained. I think one of the things that we have to do as a city is get away from some of the idealism that we've sort of had thrust upon us the last, maybe the last 10 years. A lot of this comes from, I hate to say it, a lot of it comes from California. And I love California, my daughter lives there, not putting it down, but I think we have to get back to the idea of city services, cities doing what they're supposed to do, and that's take care of the parks, take care of the pools, have some areas where people can meet and mix. It's just more like a small town. I think we've become such a city that we've forgotten who we are sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you. As it pertains to transportation, I think I have some great ideas. Ultimately, I really wish that the Proposition 1 had separated the road improvement funding from the light rail bond. I think it would have done better to market and sell the light rail bond and keep the cost down, but that was $400 million that we now don't get to make a decision on if we just want those road improvements. It's all or nothing. Also, $250 million of that is going to go towards improvements on I-35, which should really be taken care of by the state of Texas. I think that money should stay in Austin. Many of the planned improvements by Campo, which they estimate will cost around $5 billion, I think that money could be better spent to build some of the planned toll roads as free roads and to buy out existing contracts with toll roads. This could take would cause about a 19% reduction in traffic immediately, which would get a lot of cars off the road and get people to where they're going faster. And it would also save and leave about $2 billion in surplus in the budget that we could use for other city projects. So it'll not only save money, but it'll improve transportation.
Thank you. Mr. Salazar?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is say no to a $1.4 billion train that doesn't really address our issues. Then we can go for opening up tollways in peak hours, like everybody once said. And for me personally, and what I get a lot of feedback from is expanding, public transportation. I did employment. I talked to a lot of people that work third shifts, and so when they got home, they couldn't get home on public transportation because there was no bus service. We have $1 million racetrack in Formula One that we put money in, but yet we cannot move our population around our city. I see a fundamental problem with that. And so I think we need to focus on that as well. So, these are common sense issues. Just serve your citizens. If we start with serving our citizens first, I think that is going to put us in the right direction. Thank you.
Mr. English?
Just to make sure I'm on point, would you repeat the question for me?
Of course. What land use and transportation options are appropriate as part of the upcoming planning process?
Thank you. One of the big question marks we have looming over us, and I'm sure a lot of people here are familiar with it, is a project currently underway called Code Next. It's at this point, there's a lot of unknowns. We're still dealing with the very preliminary stages of this process, and until the details are unfolded, it's going to be difficult to give specific answers to what land use policies are going to be appropriate, because we simply don't have the details on that yet. I do believe that current land use throughout the district is actually fairly good, and I would not support policies and procedures that would radically alter that without considerable citizen input and an analysis of the impact on the adjoining neighborhoods. And the same general philosophy applies to our transportation policies in those areas. Thank you.
Ms. Poole?
Yeah, I'd have to say okay. I'd have to say I agree with what Ed just said, that it seems like the current land use works pretty well, and that's one of the things that we're trying to protect with the neighborhood plan. So what I would say is with Code Next, it's required that that respect and reflect the neighborhood plans, and that any changes and that the plans are comprehensive throughout the neighborhoods. I would also say that the plans reflect the vision and values of the neighbors who took time and energy years ago to craft those plans. And then I will just say on the transportation, I'm a big rail fan, but I am not supporting this current rail bond for the reasons that have been articulated up here, including the bonded indebtedness issue that was big for me from sitting on a bond task force. I know all the infrastructure projects that this city needs, and if we absorb our bonding capacity with 1.XYZ billion for the rail bonds, we will not have time to fund our parks, pools, and libraries. Thank you.
Thank you.
As this relates to transportation, I'm an advocate of rail and bus, pedestrian, bikeways. I'm for anything that gets people out of their cars. And this is a fairly broad question, that's why I don't think you've heard very specific answers. But I think that one of the things that I can point to specifically, the Austin Oaks PUD is something that I think is out of whack. I think most people in this neighborhood will know that a 17-story office building with seven floors of parking is not compatible with a neighborhood. Another in-district zoning case that we have is the Austin Korean Presbyterian Church. A few members of this panel joined me in writing a letter, Leslie and Pete, to the city council and the mayor opposing this. I've already received an angry letter from the developer who I know. So you have to have an idea of what is and isn't appropriate land use, and 1,000 trips a day into a neighborhood like Crestview is not appropriate. A two-story condo that looks like the adjacent building right next. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question again is a 1-minute question. It's a little bit long, so I'm going to ask you to pay a little bit of attention, and I will try to be as clear with this question as I can. So, a common criticism of recent planning efforts, and this is current city council planning, not future city council planning efforts, of current city council planning efforts is that the staff solicits public input, ignores it, and implements what they wanted all along. People don't trust the process, and as a result, tend to abandon compromise. So in this context, what steps should City Council take to build trust in the planning process? I'll start with you, Mr. Whittle. And once again, 1 minute.
No, thank you. You know what? Right away, I'm going to go the other way. I worked with the city for 5 years on that restaurant recycling project. If you've ever been on a committee of any sort, you know what happens. Everybody's really excited the first night. You know, second time somebody brings cookies, and that's really great. And by the third time, you have this incredible drop-off. We worked with the city once a week for 2 years, then once a month for another 2 years, then periodically for another year. We started out 5 years prior with 30 restaurateurs. We ended up with about 3 involved. It's just the nature of things. It's not the city, though. The reality of it is that people find a hard time finishing their commitments. If you're willing to work with the city, believe me, they have stakeholder meetings. Look at the Imagine Austin thing. They spent 3 years and $4 million on that. There are a lot of people. Was anybody in this room involved in Imagine Austin? Okay, so you know that if you stay with it, the city will work with you on it, and you can have a voice. but you can't stay home and have a voice.
Thank you.
Thank you. I like this question because I think that it perfectly describes the outgoing city council as one who asks a lot of questions and then ignores the information that they get from neighborhoods and makes the decisions that they think are best for you. Which is why 10-1 was created. I think we're going to see major improvements with 10-1. I feel even a little bad saying that because I did have members of the current council work with me on the APD training and helping me get that done. But if elected, I think we need to reinstill the thought that you are the city council. I work for you. I'm running so that I can represent you down at City Hall. I would like to see more connections between the citizens and the people at City Hall, even if that means opening a satellite office or improvements to technology so that you don't have to come down to City Hall at noon on a Wednesday in order for your voice to be heard.
Thank you. Mr. Salazar?
I completely agree. I think the current city council believes that you exist to provide them with position, but I think our position exists to provide you with results. And I really worked with this. I worked on ECHO, it was a nonprofit group of all the nonprofits, and we advised the city for more than 5 years. I left and came back, and they were working on the same issues, and I'm like, what happened to all the results that we gave them in a forum with people? And they said they just didn't pay attention. And that's wrong. That's the crux of this issue. That's why we're all here. You keep on giving input and input. You do neighborhood plans and nobody pays attention. Well, their time to do what they're doing is about to end, and we're going to really have a change. And once again, you are our directors. So when that day comes, whoever you elect here, I promise you, change is going to come, just like they said in that song. Thanks so much.
Well, I believe the question was, what would you do to build trust in the planning process?
Correct.
I have 30 years of experience in bringing people with very different points of view to the negotiating table to find common points of interest and work out from there. And obviously, you have to have citizen buy-in in the process extraordinarily early in the process and at every step of the process. And that's only going to go so far. You have to have some scorecard, some measure of putting value on the citizen input if you expect it to be incorporated into final decision making. And what I'd like to see is a system whereby when the city staffers or city council weighs in with their decision, they get so many points. When the stakeholders who live in the neighborhood weigh in on their point of view, they get so many points. Their positions, their opinions count just as much as the city, so that in the final analysis, when the scores are tallied up, your opinions count, and they will be factored into final decisions that are made. Thank you.
Well, what I'd say is it's imperative that the new council takes steps to establish trust in the planning process, and I'm really clear on the concept that it's council that sets the policy, not the staff. I've served on bond task forces and on city commissions, and I have seen firsthand the closed information loop that members of the volunteers on a commission, we rely on the staff to get information, and we only get what they give us. And if you don't have the resources or the knowledge yourself to reach out beyond that to get additional information, you're kind of stuck in this closed information loop. So that needs to change. What I would say is I would also have very specific discussions with the city manager and the department heads concerning how we move forward. And establishing the council's new operating protocols would be really important for the new 10 district and 1 mayor system. I think we need to look at how often the council meets in session. Right now it's once a week. I would advocate for 2. I would use the council committee structure to handle more issues at the council committee level rather, okay, maybe I'll have a chance to finish that up at another time. Thank you.
Thank you. There is an ongoing process of bait and switch with the city. We are invited into the planning process and then routinely ignored, as this question suggests. There are 2 ways to fix this. One is that under the new system, you're going to have a council member that is accountable to you. You are not going to have some indifferent city staff person with no recourse. You have a vote, you can complain, you can make things very uncomfortable for elected officials. I have seen it happen. So I think that that's part of it. The other is that we need to change the form and function of how this city government works. We are administrators, we function a lot like a board of trustees as opposed to somebody who can actually get in and audit these agencies that are responsible for providing you information that is accurate and consistent with the projects that you're worried about, namely Code Next and other things, and corridor planning, things like that. You need to have full and fair information. I think council members need to play a role in providing that to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I guess my first thought, I'm thinking now as a citizen, is we got to elect someone who is not the status quo. You have to get someone who has not been entrenched in the city government and their process for the last 20 years. You need a fresh face, you need accountability, and you need someone who can and has brought people to the table and will work hard for you. Yeah, I worked 6 years in a mediation department where we had to take opposing sides, and no one would leave the room until we were able to come to common ground. I use that in my planning process, public policy. I work as a facilitator helping 6 county-wide transportation initiative. I work 22 jurisdictions in Travis County. And the trust is that they know that when you're coming in, that it's not about you and someone else's agenda. The status quo has to stop, and I think trust in all of us would be restored.
Thank you.
So, the key issue here is that people show up, they take time out of their day to participate in a process, then they feel like they're ignored. So that needs to be addressed. I have dealt with numerous public planning processes, both here in Austin, working with community groups and boards and commissions, and also with the Texas Coastal Management Program, I would go down to coastal groups and coastal communities and present plans. And I've learned and found, often the hard way, that it's best coming with as little as possible, maybe just ideas, and soliciting input from folks and building them through the process. You have to have a transparent process. People have to see how the plans were developed, how their input was handled and responded to throughout the whole process here. I think certainly the accountability that we're going to have as part of this 10-1 system, having council members who are responsible, who citizens can speak to, and who will hold the staff accountable for what they're doing on planning projects and how they're communicating to the public in the community is key for all of this.
Thank you. So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I believe you started. You started, so.
Another minute.
Thank
I was
you.
getting,
So this is our final. Thank you very much for all of your patience, and thank you for all of your staying on time. We appreciate that. So this is the final 1-minute question that we will ask you. We will take a break, and then we will open it up to audience questions. So the final question, and this one we're going to go back to you, Mr. Salazar. The question is, would you uphold existing neighborhood plans as the starting point for corridor planning? And you have 1 minute.
Absolutely. I think in every questionnaire that I've been asked, I put that first. That neighborhood plans need to be the starting point. I think we all had a meeting at Lamar Middle School, and we had some current council people there, and they were talking about Imagine Austin and corridor planning, and I'm like, what about neighborhood plans? And there was a silence to go over there for a bit, and they're like, well, we're going to incorporate it a bit. But this is a city of the people. A neighborhood plan is your vision. It's time that people start listening to it. So yes, absolutely, I would. Thank you.
Thank you.
A resounding yes. The neighborhood plans have been in existence for some time. They were put together with the blood, sweat, tears, time commitment of a lot of very dedicated people within the neighborhoods to generate a vision for their neighborhoods. The corridor plan concept, much like Code Next, is very new. It's been put forward very recently. There's a lot of details missing. There's been some serious questions raised about how they would interweave with the neighborhood plans, particularly where the two meet. Those questions simply have not been answered, and I think the weight of credibility at this point in time weighs very heavily with the neighborhood plans. They've been given significant consideration and worked on and for many, many years, and I'd certainly consider them a starting point.
Thank you.
The answer is a yes, absolutely. Imagine Austin explicitly requires that neighborhood plans be respected and reflected in the new code rewrite. That's on page 207. The vision and the preferences of the neighborhoods throughout the city are part of the neighborhood plans, and they're expressed in that entire document, not just in the future land use portions, which is the portion that the city staff pulls out and puts on the website, and that's the one that they refer to most often. But there's a whole lot more information in the entire neighborhood plan. I would also say that I support an economic analysis of Code Next before it's implemented, and that is also called for on page 207 of the Imagine Austin plan, and the Planning Commission has requested that as well, although it hasn't happened yet. The current council will vote on the code approach alternatives in October. They will come back to the new council, and I'll ask the hard questions about whether neighborhood plans can be realized fully under the new code at that time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm supportive of keeping neighborhood plans. This is a question that was cleverly written by Mr. Zettner, and it involves the suspicion that the corridor planning process is designed to be an infringement upon neighborhood plans and the building blocks for the breaking down of those plans. Development can work around neighborhood plans. They're intact for a reason. We do not need to be going into neighborhoods and reducing their street frontage. We can keep neighborhoods as they are and manage the growth that is coming here, especially the type of growth that is coming here. The median age in Austin is now 31 years old. We're talking about transient professionals. We're not talking about families as much as we are that category of people. So we need to be able to work around neighborhoods and respect that they've been there for 50 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, if anyone ever opened up one of the neighborhood plans, they would see that they are part of the corridor. So the neighborhood plan is the corridor. And what I know in District 7 of the neighborhood plans that have been adopted, there is succinct development all along. That makes it very easy in the planning process. It's already been done. What's not been done is the part where maybe neighborhoods who have chosen to opt out. And they should have that right. They're the taxpayers. This is where they live, and this is where they spend their money, and they pay taxes. So when people talk about corridor plans, and maybe again, I'm looking at it because of all my experience, but they're already been implemented. We just need to adhere to them.
Well, I was at that meeting at Lamar Middle School where the staff came and attempted to explain the corridor planning process. I didn't really understand it or what was going on. I asked them questions at the meeting afterwards, and they couldn't really explain what they were trying to do. And I've been going to neighborhood meetings where people have tried to explain to their neighbors what happened at that Lamar meeting, what the staff was doing these corridor plans, and nobody's been able to really explain what these plans are trying to do. And the one thing I have seen is that these plans that this whole discussion by the city is stirring up a lot of anxiety in the neighborhoods and a lot of concern. And I'm not sure what the point of any of this is. So I'm really not sure we need to do the corridor planning process at all. And I think that is the first question where we really need to be asking before we even get into any potential conflicts. And then, as a good example of projects that, inconsistent with neighborhood plans, the Austin Oaks proposed PUD is a wildly inconsistent project. It's inconsistent with the neighborhood plans. It's inconsistent with Imagine Austin. It's definitely a project that does not need to happen.
Thank you.
One of the purposes of this whole 10-1 transition is to try to decentralize decision-making. It seems like we're always preaching to the choir. Obviously, the people that are sitting in this room are involved. I would absolutely support the neighborhood plans as a starting point. They say when you make a vote, you can vote your party, which obviously in Austin municipal politics is not that big a deal, at least at this level. You can vote your conscience, which the reality is sometimes elected officials have to do that. But the reality of it is with 10-1, the idea is that you should be able to vote your constituency. And the neighborhoods in Austin are very strong. These particular neighborhood associations are incredibly strong. And all I can tell you is that if I were to be elected, I would vote my constituency. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, which seems to be the consensus up here, which is a good thing, and I think that's why we went forward with this 10-1, is so we can get better representation. So good news all around. But absolutely, I think the neighborhood plans need to be stuck to verbatim when we are planning how we're going to map out these corridors. I would also look for members of neighborhood associations to be key members of my staff once elected, as well as consultants, so that we maximize the input and the impact that neighborhood associations have on the corridor.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That is the final moderated question. I believe now we are going to a break. After the break of 5 minutes, we will be back. If you have a question, we have 2 mics set up here at the front. We ask that you line up behind these mics. Yes, thank you very much, Laura. Do you want to?